Are we ready for live stream? We're set to go? All right, Frank, thank you very much. I'll wait for Britt and then Councilor Johnson to get back before we get started in a couple of minutes here. I don't know. Okay, we're going to get this working session started here. Thanks, everybody in the audience, for your patience. We don't have a specific agenda, so we're going to be talking about a variety of things here. The purpose of this working session, which is designed to discuss a variety of issues moving forward. As far as we go, and we're going to look at a working session here, we're going to talk about 8 things. The legislative session updates, the proposed LGA cuts, which is in bonding projects. We'll talk about those things. But just to let you know that the proposed LGA cuts, the legislative session ended last night at midnight. However, the tax committee didn't get their tax bill done. There's many other things that haven't been done. They're going to continue to work on that. We don't know if the governor is going to call a special session, but there are proposed cuts to the LGA that still are in play right now. So I just found that out earlier in the break. In addition to that, bonding projects, we have bonding projects in the works, particularly our $2.5 million bonding project for the City of Virginia's upgrades for City Hall, both steam conversion, windows, and roof and energy upgrades. Right now, there is no bonding bill. We don't know if there's going to be a bonding bill, and that'll be up to the legislature to decide. But the likelihood is, according to the legislators down there, that it's probably not going to have a bonding bill this year. So, but yet, please stay tuned for that. We'll try to be optimistic about that. Agenda item number 2 is the city updates. We're going to review the monthly financials through April this year. We're going to review the 2025 budget. We're going to review the city long-term debt and indebtedness report. We're going to review city's 10-year capital equipment outlay, which is very important moving forward. There's our vehicle equipment replacement schedules that have not been taken care of. It's been neglected for a couple of decades. We've been trying to catch up. Staying with our street projects, it's extremely difficult to do so. And so we're doing our very best to look at what that looks like moving forward. And so we're going to update on the grants that we have that are being held by the city right now and talk about how that moves forward. We're going to review all the city-owned buildings. There are several of them, including our lift stations. There are about 40 or some buildings, including lift stations of those. There's a plan for required steam conversion for the city buildings, which is City Hall, the library, the Public Utilities Building, and other places. We're going to look at other potential building improvements that are going to be required. Jim Rosvet, our Public Works Director, has outlined some of the significant deterioration of the roofs and the infrastructure system and some of the things that we have. If anybody's seen our Public Works facility, it's atrocious where they have to work. It's horrible. And so those things have to be done. When you're working on a dirt floor and when it rains out, it leaks into there and you're walking through mud and standing water. That's a problem. We have to do something about that. We're going to talk about that. We're going to update on the current proposed street and alley projects moving forward. We have Matt Reed from SCH here, Jim Rosvet, our Public Works Director, Britt Bennis, and others. We're going to talk about where we're moving with that. We're going to get an update on the current and proposed park and recreation projects from Brian Silber, our Park and Rec Director. We're going to review the city organizational structure, what our charts is, what changes we might want to make moving forward for the future. We're looking at other hiring updates that we have moving forward, and we're going to discuss a proposed garbage rate increase in order to solidify our solid waste enterprise fund. So these are some of the things we're talking about today, but it's going to be an open discussion about that. It could be long and arduous, but we're going to start with item number 1 on the agenda, which are the legislative session updates. like I indicated, we talked to our lobbyist earlier in the session and again last night, that there's a lot of work that has not been done at the legislature. Not a lot of it has been in commerce, taxes, transportation, buildings, governmental affairs, all have not been resolved yet. And so that's a work in progress for them. So our proposed LGA cuts, they're still in the play. A decision has been made on the tax bill as of yet. And of course, the bonding projects, there is no bonding bill now, like I said before, so there's some issues there we have to talk about, not only the bonding projects that we have in play, or the ones that we wanted to go for in the future, and whether or not it's going to be a bond bill this year or next year. So let's start with the legislative session updates. Britt, do you have anything? Okay. Anybody have anything about the legislative updates? So just to let you know that this is, it's still ongoing. We don't know if the governor is going to call a special session or not, but it is likely that we are going to have some difficult times ahead moving forward as we try to find out what the final outcome is of the legislative session so we can start planning our 2026 budget. So whatever decisions are made, whatever cuts are being proposed or voted upon, if that goes through, there's going to be a significant impact on city services and how we provide them. So, like I said, the bonding project, $2.5 million for the city upgrades. There is no money. The bonding bill has not, there was no bonding bill this year. And like I said, the likelihood there's not going to be. But we'll stay tuned. There's still some talk about having one. But if they didn't get everything done in the legislative session, the likelihood they could, before they resolve all these issues, it has to be done before the governor calls a special session, and we don't know what that's going to happen. So those are the legislative updates, where everything's still up in the air at this point in time. But with some of the cuts that are being proposed and some of the unfunded mandates, the increase in the taxes that we're going to have to pay, it's going to be an issue for the city when it comes to budget time in 2025. So if you're looking for some optimism about how our budget moves forward, it's going to be a huge challenge for us this year. Number two, city finance updates. Review the monthly finance through April 2025. So Britt, do we have anything here? Who? Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to just discuss the proposed LGA cuts, if I could.
Okay, please do.
So Britt and Pam have both been really diligent at sending us any updates from any lobbyists or the league or the Greater Coalition of Minnesota Cities. So I want to thank you both for that. What alerted, I think, all of us, a lot of us, with the potential LGA decrease impact was the Duluth mayor. They were, I don't know, notified that the LGA potentially cuts would be on the board, or I guess on the board, potentially to cut. And it was a bill that was introduced in the Senate. There is no counterpart in the House. So that's actually a good thing to cut LGA. But what they were trying to do is trying to accomplish, I believe it was a $20 million savings cut out of LGA, which they went across the board. I've got the chart that was in an email from the, I don't know if it was the League or the Greater Coalition of Minnesota Cities.
St. Louis County have the bigger percentage of cuts.
No, well, I'm not sure about that,
Yeah.
but it's,
I just
what I'm
found that
reading
today.
is it's 3.1% across the board. And that Stern, St. Louis County, that Crow Wing, that was all across the board. So if LGA cuts do happen, what is in the chart as a proposed cut for the city of Virginia of our current LGA rate? Last year, we received $7,072,293. The proposed cut would be LGA reduction to $6,852,550, which would be a total cut of $219,778 from our LGA, which is 3.1%. So as we move forward in our budget discussions, I mean, it'll depend, but it's not as hard as Duluth got hit, mainly because I believe Duluth receives $35 million in LGA. So according to this chart, it was a 3.1 reduction, 3.1% reduction across the entire Minnesota state in all counties. That's what this chart says. I don't know if it changed upon further discussion with the legislative bodies, but so we would need to be prepared for a potential reduction of our LGA, which is our local government aid of $219,778. So going forward, I feel like maybe we should plan for the worst and hope for the best as we do our budget process, knowing that that could still potentially be on the table. And that's all I had. I just wanted to explain to the general public as we move forward, it's very important to pay attention to what is happening at the legislative level. But we would, if it did pass, we would be looking at a $219,000 cut. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think the bill was introduced by Senator Rest on the tax committee, chair of the tax committee moving forward. So a very powerful environment there, being down there testifying on that. The tax committee has a lot to say about that. So we'll see how that works forward, but thank you for that, Councilor Paulson. In addition, you have some additional information?
Just one additional is we were going to go through our bonding projects.
Yep,
And I don't know if that's
yep. Next on the agenda is
that
the
what we're
bonding
doing
projects.
next?
Mhm,
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay. No, go ahead with whatever that is.
Yeah, we just talked about what we have in the bonding bill is a request for $2.5 million, as I alluded to earlier. That $2.5 million to help with steam conversion at City Hall, new windows and energy upgrades, and a new roof. We had a fire, we've had a flood here. We've had some insurance, so there's a lot of damage. We need that repaired. And there was $1.5 million requested last year. Because of the issues we had, we updated that to $2.5 million for this year, hoping that would be, and that would come out of the bonding bill. It doesn't come out of the cash investments, comes out of bonding. There's no bonding bill this year so far, and it doesn't look like there's going to be one. So that's our bonding project that we put in for the city. Britt, do you have any other bonding projects in the works? I think we had to pare down what was important to us. You have 5 or 6 different bonding projects. You know, they said pick the real priority. So we picked this for a variety of reasons. One is that we have significant damage and old building needs to be done. Number 2, do we have a sprinkler system in this building? No. So, I mean, we look at all those things and what needs to be done based on that priority about what we have to do. And by asking for the money in the bonding bill for the City Hall project, we don't have to go to the, you know, there's extra money left over, you know, by accessing or gleaning additional money from the Department of Public Utilities makes it difficult because of the steam conversion that's going on down on Chestnut Street, some of these larger buildings like the library, you know, and some of the other areas, the Teeny Square building, the Lincoln building, and many others who are there significant amount of investment that have to be made in steam conversion. So by getting that money from the state, that helps a little bit as well, but that didn't happen. These bills normally carry on to the following year, which is part of the, if there is a bonding bill, those that were already in the hopper get the higher priority about consideration in that regard. But that's moving forward. So that's all I have for the bonding projects, unless anybody has any questions with respect to that. Well, let's move on item number 2 then, the city finance update, review of the monthly finances through April 2025. And you have that in, Britt? The packet, okay. So let's take a look. Let's open up for discussion about our monthly finances between now and April of 2025. So Sherry is not here, our finance director. She is out on leave. So does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns about the finance packet of what our monthly finances are through April of 2025? And just to let you know, the city has done their due diligence and tried to keep the thumb on the pulse of the expenditures and revenues coming in 2025 every single Monday, is it? There's a finance meeting in the morning where the council can come and others can come and we talk about the finances and find out what's going on in that regard. So Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. This isn't necessarily in the packet, in the monthly finances, but every month we receive a credit card statement from Elon, And I just was thinking, you know, a lot of people receive reward points for travel and hotel, so airfare and hotel. Do we have a credit card? Because we're spending, our expenditures have gone up from maybe 15,000 a month to now we're seeing some bills over $30,000 a month. Does our current credit card company provide any rewards that we could then utilize for any employee travel to offset the cost of employee travel, whether that would be airline miles, hotel miles, but we are spending so much continuously monthly on our credit cards that I feel like we could be really taking advantage of a reward point system. And I don't know if we do receive any of that from Elon. Would that be something that we could review and maybe look into another credit card company that would, I mean, 30, if you're spending 20 to $30,000 a month, month in, month out, you're going to collect a lot of points. So I was just thinking that might be a really good way to offset any travel expenditures for any department by using reward points towards travel.
So Britt, would it be beneficial if we made a motion or?
Yeah.
Oh,
Why don't we look for information? We'll come back to the council with that. That's okay.
Okay. So is there any other questions on reviewing the monthly finances through April of 2025? Counselor Bachschnider.
Thank you. So at our monthly meetings, we look at the monthly budget worksheets. I also, going forward, would really like to see the balance sheets, revenues, and expenses. I think that the per department monthly sheet can be helpful, especially for department heads. But I think for us to understand the budget and where we're at overall from a bigger picture, for us to receive the balance sheets, revenues, and expenses going forward would be really helpful.
Counselor Bachschnider, I would agree to that one. So is that something, Britt, that we could maybe, I know we can't do any action step here, but I feel like that would maybe, that month to month would give us a clear picture, and maybe we wouldn't have to go micro through each of the departments if they each had, and the enterprise, would you also like to see the enterprise funds,
Yes, please.
all funds?
Yes, please.
Just for anybody that's under general fund, there'll be one balance sheet for all those departments. So administration, clerk, council, mayor, fire,
Yep.
CDPP will be under one
Under
balance
the
sheet.
general fund.
Yep, will be one balance sheet. And then I did put the balance sheets for sewer, NS, solid waste, are already in your packet today.
How about for what other funds do we have?
Public Works is under general, police are under general,
What about enterprise, though?
enterprise is solid waste, sewer,
We have the ITMEC under,
NS, Iron Tail Motors Event Center, and golf, yes, thank you, golf course.
so maybe if we could do, that would be really helpful, I think, going forward, too. Sorry, Mayor, you're back.
Thank you. And when we get to the next agenda item, 2B, where we're going to look at the 2025 budget, I think that that's really what will help us understand if we're staying within the overall budget, because we'll just see a bigger picture. So, thank you.
Any questions, comments about the financials to date from January to April? Okay, let's move to item 2B, which is review the 2025 budget. Counselor Bachschnider?
Thank you. So when we're looking at the 2025 budget, I guess the question I would have is where overall a balance sheet are we at with the budget? Are we at a comfortable place knowing all of the projects that we'll be discussing next? I just want to kind of look at this as a framework perspective as we're going on to the next agenda items beyond this.
I don't know how to answer that question, but I can certainly try. As we're going through the sheets that are provided, the monthly sheets, it does give you the percentage of where everybody is in their budget for the year. The projects that we're going to go through are not necessarily related to the city departments. So they're very different discussions that we'll talk about. Because like if it's a street project, it's not necessarily Public Works budget that it comes out of a project fund, so it's a little different. So I think that, I mean, when you look at everybody, every month when we're looking at these, we're looking at their overall totals and we're seeing where they're landing. The majority of them are between 30 and 40%, which is exactly where we want them to be at this time of year. So if they're by department, they're doing good, they're doing well, which is what we want.
So as we're looking at these things, I think we have some of our staff in the audience today to talk about some of these issues. So I would ask that any staff member that would like to come forward and give us a little information about your budgets. I'm not asking you to talk about some of any cuts or anything. We just want to know where you at, what are your limitations? What are you being limited to based upon your budget? What you don't have? What you can't purchase? Those kind of things. That'd be helpful. And we're going to talk about that in the budget process as well moving forward. Each department head will be alluding to that. But looking at limited amount of equipment, looking at the cut in some of these other areas in the equipment purchases, and I'm going to bring up the grader because we got a lot of angst for me. Can't buy a new grader, it's $440,000. Can't go in the technical capital equipment bond, so we have to find something else. I've had counselors and others say, well, why can't you buy a used piece of equipment? And you had one person come to the council representing another company talking about what a lease option are. That's our job to look at that. It's our job to determine what we need to do. It's our job to look at the 2025 budget, say what can we do and what can't we do. If we can't purchase these things, and I'm putting this particular, there's other issues too, that at $440,000, we're not going to buy a new grader, we can't find a used one, it's going to cost a lease, and all those things that have been vetted out. The services that are provided to the city of Virginia, because we don't have that second grader, is impacted significantly as a result. So any roads that we fix, anything that we grade, we don't have that grader, it just delays the time frame in which to get those things fixed. We want to make sure that whatever piece of equipment they have to operate it, that it's a safe piece of equipment to operate. And there's a lot of confidence about lease to own or just lease this piece of equipment for a 3-month period or a 2-month period. We have to listen to our staff. We have to find a way in which to have this thing available all the time, all year round. You can't just use it for 2 months and then turn it in, and then come back in October and November and then something for the winter, and we use it for a couple more months. That's not how things work. That's not cost effective. That's not service effective. So by looking at where we're looking at the 25 budget, what are we providing? What's not in this 25 budget that we're going to have to look at for 2026 and beyond. So it's not just because we reviewed the monthly finances through April 2025, but this is a 2025 budget, and there are a lot of limitations in many areas of our organization. And I'm going to give you one example, and there's the same with how many city buildings do we have, and we're going to talk about that. I mean, come on. How long are we going to kick the can down the road? We've already done that with street improvements and all kinds of other things. So when we pick at the 2025 budget, saying we're not here, we're not there, we have to make sure that we can provide the services. They're going to be impacted as a result. So when we go with that, there's a lot of other issues, but I just want to throw that out there for additional discussion. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I truly have to agree with you on missing the forest, focusing on the weeds. One of the things that I keep trying to bring up that we seem to miss is that budgets are fluid documents. They're living documents. I'm looking at the sheets provided that we get every month, that I look at every month. And if comparing this year's sheets to last year's sheets, it would be very easy to see that some of the items are spot on all the time because it's based on monthly expenditures, payroll, that kind of stuff. And there's other things like supplies and unpredictables that don't match. And they don't match because if we have a really heavy snowstorm in April, we're going to be using more overtime. We're going to be using more trucks are going to break, so we're going to be fixing more parts. And so last April, maybe we spent $10,000 in parts at Public Works. And this April, we only spent $2,000 in parts at Public Works because there wasn't a major snowstorm that created the need for fixing things. The other part that I brought up earlier in the previous meeting is budgets are meant to be moved. Once a line item is put in a budget, it is not stagnant. If we know that, I'm just happened to be looking at the city attorney, for example. If we know that there's going to be zero postage spent, we're already halfway, or we're 30% through the year, we spent nothing of the $300 postage budget. And this is the kind of things we discuss, $300 here, $12 bill there, that kind of stuff. We can take that $300 and put it to something else where it can be used. Travel for the city council, travel for our employees. That is how budgets are meant to work, and that is what we don't do a great job of in this room, is allowing our professional staff on all levels to do that for us and just let us know. We see it every month. There's nothing hidden. Every document you can imagine can be requested via email, and in my experience in the last 8+ years, anytime I request a document or a question, as long as the person's working and it's during their business day, I get an answer within a couple hours. So I take some offense at times when it's kind of inferred or implied or whatever word you want to use, that stuff is happening in Virginia with our budget that isn't open. Everything we do here is wide open. Anybody at any time from anywhere can request any document from any department, and within reason, it'll get to you. Now, if you request, the entire budget run for April and all the supporting documents, that's going to take some time, and if you want to see it, other than electronically, it might cost you some money because there's staff hours input in that, there's paper resources, there's printing resources, but everything we do is wide open to the public. Nothing happens that is secretive, nothing happens that is not written down. Again, I'm scrolling through, I just happen to be on the data processing monthly stuff. There's a lot of line items on here that are at zero simply because we don't pay those bills until July. So having a budget where every month is the same amount of expenditures and that kind of stuff is not realistic. It is our duty as elected officials, we have a responsibility to be, fiduciary responsibility to watch this and to ask questions as they come up. I do not attend the regular monthly meeting of this budget simply because when I have questions, I ask. I also review them when they come out in our packet. They come out in our packet regularly. Our bills come out every month, at least 3 days in advance. So I do feel some frustration that we are taking additional time to do stuff we're already doing in a separate meeting in an afternoon where our staff that are sitting here could be actually running the city and doing what they need to do. Email, I like sending my questions via email simply because then I have it to refer back to. I don't have to ask the same question 6 times. Or if I need clarification, I just send an email back, the clarification comes, and then I have answers when people ask me questions. So I just really want the general public to understand that city government is not running your own business. City government is exactly what it is. Some days we move forward, some days we move backwards, and some days we move in a circle. And that's how it is. The same thing goes for the Iron Trail Motors Event Center, for example. It is a government entity. There's things we can and can't do. Same way with the airport. I'm the chair of the Evelyn, Virginia Airport Commission, whatever we are. Sometimes people get frustrated because we can't just say, go ahead and do that. It takes time, it takes effort. Being an elected official is an amazing responsibility and the privilege of my life, and I will continue to voice my concerns and my frustrations as they are voiced to me by constituents as well as my personal feelings. So I appreciate the opportunity, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Paulson?
Thank you. Rick, could you direct me to which page? I'm down on 2B for the review the 2025 budget, and I also went through the finances and didn't see the ITMEC Enterprise Fund. Could you direct me to where I might find that? Budget and/or, I didn't see that in the monthly finances either. Maybe I just missed it.
After golf course.
Is it,
Or
is that the monthly finances?
Yeah.
Okay, what page is that? I'm on 40. Oh,
For the library too, if you can find the library.
okay. I guess my overall question is, when we had the initial, what was it called? It wasn't the performance from Isaac Sports Group. What was it
the
called?
pro
The
forma.
pro forma. They gave us I believe it was an 8-year timeframe to actually do a break even. And I'm just wondering, as we plan forward, I feel like we're really moving in the right direction at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. I think some of the decisions we've made are definitely cost-saving measures, and I'm excited to see how they take effect and how they maybe potentially generate some revenue. My question is, how close are we to achieving that goal from the original pro forma? And would there be any other suggestions or recommendations that the staff has or you have? But I feel like we're doing a good job. I mean, you're doing a really good job down there. But I don't know if there's any other suggestions that we can be working on, especially if we're looking at some other potential cuts. Like, what else could we be helping you work on or supporting you in to try to achieve some of that pro forma projection?
And as we do this, to talk about this, Brian Silber, our Park and Rec Director, you cut personnel, you cut services. You cut services, the public doesn't benefit from it. Brian?
I'll give you a one-word answer. Hotel. Give us a hotel. You look at, if you want this building to be successful, if you want this building to be breaking even, our pro forma said we'd have a hotel by now. We don't, so we should be going backwards. We're not because of the great staff that we have. But if you want us to get to the point that we are really making an impact, hotel. That's your one answer. Look at 1 week from the month of April, when we were hosting a conference. That week generated the building itself nearly $50,000 from that $50,000 direct dollars, not counting the economic impact that it had on our community. But for us to get things like that on a regular basis, almost every single RFP that will directly translate to a big dollar amount for the building requires a connected or an adjacent hotel.
So much for that. I
So
don't know how much we can speak to on that. But that, I believe, Brian, I very accurately stated, and I know that that's really a priority. And moving forward, I feel like all of us have asked questions on that. So I think that should be a priority I'm hearing it, we're all hearing it. That should be our priority going forward to assist with operations at the ITMEC.
Counselor Beyondich, and over to Counselor Bucksteiner. Counselor Beyondich.
you, and I'm not quite sure how much can be spoken on that issue either, but a lot of people have asked, when is it coming? Is it coming? So I totally agree that I think that would greatly benefit not only that facility, but the whole community. So I don't know if we should start working on that, or we are. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just to give you an update about the hotel, the individual who purchased, contingent upon building the hotel, has indicated that they're going to build it. Well, that was a long time ago. And my last conversation was a couple weeks ago with the hotel developer. Was supposed to come in and meet, didn't come. Was supposed to submit the plans to our planning and permitting department, and our did not do that either. And so it's a significant issue. This hotel developer, which is public information, we have a project development agreement to build a hotel, number one. Number two, we were very encouraged by the fact that it was going to be done sooner than later, because he did purchase the old Armory building as well. He owns that too. But there's been, basically, for the lack of a better analogy, crickets. So we're still working hard. There's a phone call into the developer to call back. We don't know where that's at, but and I'm encouraged by Jenny and Britt, who we're looking at other options at this time. So we'll see how that goes. So we lost a major event as a result of this, the World Hockey, which is extremely disappointing. And so we want to make sure that we have something that's available. And I agree with you 100%, Brian. The hotel would have been a significant boon for us as well. At the SME conference, some of these other big events, they want a hotel close by. And this particular hotel developer, of all the developments that developers that we've asked to come to build by the Iron Trail Moise Event Center, nobody else came forward because they want to be on the highway. They don't want to be within the city limits or in town. But this particular hotel developer agreed that this is possible they could do. The numbers work for him so far and his company, but he hasn't pulled through. And we took the advantage. I don't know if any of you all went on that tour. I don't remember, but we went down and toured a lot of this company's developments, and they're really good. I mean, their apartments, their townhouses are huge buildings in Edina, Richfield, all over the place. Well, a long, slow, arduous process getting it done, according to the people in those communities. And the same thing's happening here. So I wish we had some news for you, but we don't. But this is a huge challenge for us moving forward. So thank you. Councilor Beyondich.
And I know with conversations I think that I've had with them, COVID played a big part in that. When COVID hit, it kind of changed a little bit for them. So I think those are some of the challenges that they are working through as well.
Yeah, and in all fairness, too, there were some issues with the state of Minnesota for some land. In order for him to get the title for the property, we had to have some land, making sure that title was clear up. That took, I think it was deed, a long time in which to get that accomplished. And during the course of that time, when you have your development project and you've got these finances set up and they're only good for like 60 days or 90 days, and you can't get a cooperation at another governmental level, then that changes. That changes the financial outlook. It has to completely redo those things, which he's had to do on a couple of times. So it's not just an issue with respect to not wanting to build, it's to having the finances and the package available to do so. And the development agreement with us continues, but it has since has expired. So we have some openings to move forward. So thank you, Councilor Bachschneider.
If any other counselor has something to contribute to the hotel conversation, I'd look to them first.
Pardon?
If anyone else has something to contribute to the hotel conversation, please go ahead. I have a different
Okay,
topic.
all right, thank you. Does anybody else have any other comments about that? We're still working in that regard, and we are looking at other options moving forward, Brian. So nothing else? Okay, Councilor Bachschneider.
Thank you. When I look at budget overall, I think it's important to note and remember as a elected body where we get our funding from, and that is from our taxpayers. And so, excuse me, when I build my budget at home, If I go under budget, that's always a good thing, and then I can put money into my savings account for if my air conditioning doesn't work anymore, or if I need to do upgrades to my house, or anything else in my life. And I think that that's the conversation that, at least as a newly elected official and from watching meetings for years prior, that I have not seen happen, is how are we planning for our future? And so that's why I think it's really important to note that we can always go under budget, and that's a good thing, and that's the conversation that I really hope we can have. And when we look at what it costs to do a project, it's not just the cost of that project, it's the cost of our staff time. Like, there are so many costs that go into everything that we do, and just having a good financial understanding will help us in decision-making going forward. And that was really why I asked for this work session, is because I know personally I have a lot to learn, and I'm not sure if others would agree with that or not. But in order to make the decisions that I think are best for the taxpayers of Virginia, I don't want to keep increasing levies at high percentages, because I want to have a good understanding and a good plan going forward. And so that's why having this conversation now prior to budget planning is really important to me. So I just wanted to put that out there, that under budget is always a great thing to plan for a rainy day. Because to me, a contingency fund is built for when you get a sinkhole in a street, or when your neighboring community is having to evacuate and use your event facility as an evacuation zone. That is why we have contingency funds, not because we had a lack of planning the year prior. And so planning is really important to me. So thank you.
Thank you. As part of this budget discussion, about 19 to 20% of our entire budget is what we use to provide the services, to do the work, to spend the money, to fix the roads, do the streets, and those kind of things. About 80%, maybe 81% of our entire budget is salary and benefits for our employees. So we don't have a lot to work with here with respect to getting the job done. So your labor costs are high, and unlike the private sector, where you have a revenue stream that can offset the costs associated with the increases or adjustments that you make to and from your employee groups. We have bargaining units we have to deal with. We have bargaining unit contracts under the Public Employees Labor Relations Act, under PELRA, where they have a right to bargain. And so there's salaries and benefits to go with that. We don't have the revenue streams that the private companies do. If they manufacture something, they increase their price a little bit moving forward. We are at the mercy of governmental funding. And we have an obligation and a responsibility, not to them. That's our responsibility to try to get the revenue. But we have a responsibility, as you indicated, Councilor Bart Snyder, to our taxpayers. So how do we best provide the services and maintain a budget? So when it comes to a levy moving forward, there was some, I think the average up until last year, our levy over the last 10-year period was about 5.5%. There were some high levies and some low levies. So how does that work? Well, it's based on the county, your value of your home, how they raise that, how that affects the levy for the city of Virginia, the county, the school district, and those kind of things moving forward. And we're going to talk about here pretty soon the indebtedness, and I appreciate Mr. George Eilertson being here to talk about the city and how we have to fund our projects and how we do things in order to maintain the roads and the streets, which are woefully in disrepair, as there are in many other cities, but we're doing the very best we can in order to accomplish those things. So the budget is about being able to give the taxpayer the bigger bang for our buck and try to maintain as much as we can a budget that's reasonable, it's prudent, and we keep in mind the costs associated with that. Property taxes are significantly high in this study, just like there are in some others. We don't have the commercial tax base that they do down in the area. If it wasn't for the $7 million we get in local government aid, we'd be in big trouble. $8.1 million of our budget goes to public safety. So we have some huge expenses moving forward. But in order to maintain the integrity of the service that we provide, we have to make adjustments to our levy. So when it comes to budget time in 2025, we have to look at two things: services and capital equipment and the workforce. Where do you cut in order to keep a 0% levy? Personnel and capital equipment. That's why you have a 10-year capital equipment bond in order to try to maintain that capital equipment. So when you say that the city means millions in dollars in debt, many cities have indebtedness. We try to be responsible and prudent in that regard. You can't just pay as you go. You can't just get $10 million out of your budget and pay for a street. You can't just buy a piece of equipment and pay cash for it. That revenue stream isn't there. It isn't there for any other city either. So our budget has to be responsible and prudent, and then keep in mind, how it affects our taxpayer. That's going to be one of the biggest challenges that we had for a while. We had a budget a couple of years ago. It was a big problem, big issues, huge challenges. We're going to have the same thing this next year, particularly if the legislative session doesn't come through. And so we have great employees that work for us. They work hard. They're professionals. They're well-trained. They know what the heck they're doing. But the bottom line is, can we afford it? Can we afford to buy the equipment? Can we afford not to buy the equipment? Can we afford to have the amount of employees that we have? Do we have to look at a line-by-line item as a department-by-department item and determine what is the highest priority? What are the essential employee groups? What are the non-essential employee groups? We have made some changes with respect to some of those things and reduced some of the city workforce, just from the part-time perspective, and a couple of other full-time jobs as too. So we have to look at the attrition. How are we going to replace those positions? One quick question on our budget. We have budgeted for 2025. We're going to have to look at that in 2026, some adjustments to our staff, potentially, because we have a finance director who's phasing out. So we have a finance director who does both finance and human resources. Difficult to serve two masters. It's a very difficult job. We have to separate those things out. So you have to have a finance director and a human resources director. So that's going to change as well. So when you look at adjustments to personnel, we're going to have to make those, and we're going to have to make those hard decisions in 2026. So when you look at the 2025 budget, we have to be cognizant of where we're at between now and at the end of this year. And pretty soon, right now, we're in fairly decent shape as far as our expenditures go. Councilor Paulson brought up the fact that, our credit card bills are higher as a result of those things. And there's some expenditures that were made that they're budgeted for in this regard. So when you look at the credit card, these are budgeted items that are being paid for under the budget. So it's not that we're spending money that we don't have. It's part of the budget. Just like travel is part of the budget. So if we have to cut in those areas, we have to cut. But we are trying to make sure we're cognizant of that. And the professional employees that we have, need to have the training, the expertise, and the experience to work forward. We have to maintain the integrity of our workforce. That's important, because that's the driver that keeps this community running. And with the economic challenge that we're going to have in the next year, it's going to be extremely difficult. So when you say that our fire department and our EMS and our police department is $8.1 million, we have the Ryan Tremoy's Event Center, which is operating as a deficit. We're working on that, obviously, and it's a slow, arduous process. And there are a lot of people in this community that are concerned about the fact that we should never built it in the first place. I think that's short-sighted. The bottom line is, before we built that facility, the Miners Memorial Building has generated zero revenue, was crumbling before our very eyes. And the study that from a 0 to 5 scale for the integrity of a public facility like that, from 0 to 5, 0 being bad, we were at 1.5. So we were in bad shape, or coming apart. There was all kinds, so we had to do something. And the cost to rebuild that, to remodel that, was significantly high. But we were losing about $900,000 a year in the Miners Memorial Building. No one said anything about that. We are a lot more transparent in our expenditures in our budget now. It's wide open, like the councilors say. We're working on that. This is an amenity that we provide our community. We're working on the revenue stream. We made some adjustments to our staffing level. We have contracts in place now that's going to help us generate a little bit more revenue. We're going to get there. We have to be patient, because remember, these are amenities that provide our community. Not everything operates at a profit. You want to get as close to break even as you can. And this elected body here, along with our staff, is working hard to do that. So if a citizen has a concern or a comment about how we do our work, let's look at that from a factual basis. Let's look at it from a reality. Just don't look at it as a perception or a perspective. So that's how I look at the budget moving forward. In 2025, our budget is on track as we speak. We're gonna have some significant challenges in 2026. So does anybody have any other questions, comments about us on the budget moving forward? Councilor Motley.
This was just me thinking as you're talking, and I don't know if you'll have an answer, and this has nothing to do with the city of Virginia, so it's totally off topic somewhat, and I don't want anybody to,
Thanks, Matt.
I don't want any city staff to freak out when I question you if you even know this, but did Mountain Iron have a police department? Do you know?
Yes, they had a police department many, many years ago. They had a 3 or 4 person police department. They contract out to the sheriff's department. The sheriff's department pays, they pay the sheriff's department on a contract basis for coverage for there, and they pay X amount of dollars for that.
Okay, you as Mr. Mayor of Mountain Iron, I'm gonna throw another question at you, sorry.
Certainly, no problem.
Did they do it to save money?
They did not. They did not do it to save money.
Okay, so they're paying more to have the sheriff's department run their safety?
They needed more services. They needed more investigative services. They needed administrative services. They needed more professional workforce. They needed the administrative staff or the secretaries for all the. They didn't have that. They had a police chief and 3 officers. That's it. And so they actually cost them more money. In fact, if you look at the contract, now Aurora used to have a contract with the sheriff's department. They merged with Hoyt Lake so that the East Range Police Department now, the sheriff's department has one contract, and that's with the city of Mountain Iron. And it's if you take a look at what they pay for that, it's significantly higher than they did when they had the police department.
Thank you for that. Just random, because I do see that and I'm not trying to bash the police, I know they do a great job, I'm just talking, I was chatting with one of the, from a different city, a police officer, and anyway, maybe going forward, I know there's all these unions involved, but I don't know how, we're a pretty big police force in Virginia. If we could ever get our communities to work together, like Gilbert patrols by Wabick, and I don't know who else they do, but if we could ever get our department to merge with somebody else and help cut some of our costs, I don't know, other communities are doing it, why can't Virginia be involved in trying to find ways to possibly work together with other communities that live 5 seconds from us? That would be something to look into, and hopefully not be closed-minded. Thank you.
No, and we have attempted to generate some discussion with respect to a Quad City Police Department, Evelyn, Virginia, Gilbert, and Mountain Iron at the time. And we talked about that at length, about trying to merge into one police department. This was a few years back. Virginia had 29 police officers. We have 22 police officers now. We're like 4 short, maybe 5 short now in that regard. So when we were at a population of 12,450, we had 29 police officers. We have 22 now. So by merging the Quad Cities, you have 1 police chief. You have 1 assistant chief. You have then supervisors in each department. You could actually save money. There's no question about that. And so the cost-saving measures would be significant for the city of Virginia and most likely for the other communities as well. But we have yet to be able to bridge that gap of parochialism.
How does one bridge that gap? Because I was actually talking to the police chief of Gilbert.
Yeah, chief
they're-
teacher.
Yeah, and I mean, there might be some chat with Gilbert and Evelyn combining. Why can't Virginia be a part of that discussion?
We can. And I know that our chief and assistant chief are going to these, what they call them, RAC meetings and these other things that talk about that stuff. And I think we, as an elected body, have to take the lead and look to like they did with Mountain Iron. Councilor Beyondich sat on that, where Mountain Iron and Virginia talked at length for a long period of time about merging the fire departments. And that there was an agreement that both did. We haven't done so yet, but because there's a lack of there would require some additional investment by the other community, which was not approved. And so that is a huge challenge that we have. We need to move forward with it and try to open up those negotiations as well. I did bridge that conversation at the mayor's meetings through RAMS. Gilbert mayor hasn't come to those yet, and nor has the Evelyn mayor. So, but we should open up that conversation. We could save there was a study years ago that showed that there could be a benefit not only from service coverage, but also save money in administrative costs and shared costs with respect to equipment. And the larger community you have, the more opportunities you have for grants. So yes, we need to do that, and we have tried that in the past. We have not been successful, but we should continue to try to do that. So that's a great point, Councillor Motley. Councillor Freely.
You know, I don't want to bring a black cloud into the room, but like, I feel that there's been, over the past few years that we've been sitting here, we've shot ourselves in the foot, I feel, on a number of occasions. And one, for example, we had a shovel-ready building proposal over at the Old North Super One corridor. At the time, we had 5 agencies standing in front of us: HUD, St. Louis County, Chamber of Commerce, Kutaska Development Group, and Three Rivers Development Group, giving us a thumbs up on this project. And we decided we don't want that kind of housing built there or in this town. Then we had another gentleman come from Burnsville who had a similar idea to do a similar type of building, taking advantage of low-income housing tax credits at the Midway School site. Similarly, we heard that proposal and decided we didn't want that kind of housing there. The other thing was, we had the opportunity to pursue a municipal license to bring in a business opportunity, and we decided we didn't want that kind of business in town. And then we just talked today about the kinds of proposals we made to alter the fundamental framework of our permitting for potential housing in town that's something non-traditional to increase additional property tax revenue in town, and we decided we didn't want to make those changes. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things that I've seen happen over the course of the time of the years. So, like, it isn't all about, like, you know, it's not about trying to find savings or cuts or whatever. It's like trying to raise revenue to try and promote our city, to try and bring in business, to try and bring in people willing to build here, live here. And these are just some examples that come to the top of my mind where we have stiff-armed those projects, and that hasn't been beneficial to us because other developers hear that how they were treated and are not interested then in coming to Virginia to try the same thing. So I've been frustrated with that, and I hope that we start having a change in mindset in terms of the fact that we need any kind of housing, we have any kind of development, any kind of business in this city will be beneficial to the tax base that right now is significantly curtailed. So, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Freely. That was a segue from the 2025 budget review to that particular discussion, this is what we have a working session for. But we have people sitting in the audience, and so what I'd like to do is move to item 2C, because George Eilertson, our bond counsel, he's been waiting for all morning long. It's 1:30 in the afternoon. We appreciate your patience. We talk about the city's long-term debt and indebtedness report. I think this is something many of you are interested in, and I thank you, staff, for your very patience. We'll have you come up and talk about the 10-year capital outlay next. So, Mr. Robertson, thank you very much for your patience and for waiting and for listening to the discussion moving forward and participating in this working session for us.
There we are. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So I'm on the agenda regarding the city-owned buildings and the potential improvements at those buildings.
Okay, let's go to that.
However, Mayor, before I speak to that, and it's actually been a conversation with a number of council members today, and I think this is a good discussion. I brought it up a little bit earlier, the financial management plan. That's a plan that a lot of municipalities throughout Minnesota have moved ahead with. It's not an action item for today, certainly, but just as a side note, But they're a plan that looks out as far as 10 years, and I realize that a lot can change within 10 years. But I would recommend that the city, in light especially of the change in your finance director position and the volume of projects that you've done in recent years, that it would be a good tool for the city to consider. And I've talked to Steve Scharf from Baker Tilly. They've worked with the city on utility studies in the past, or in the recent past, and I think this would be a very nice tool for the city to consider. That's enough of an endorsement from me this morning. Perhaps in the next couple of meetings that you have related to the issuance of the bonds that we talked about earlier, that might be a discussion. Perhaps Baker Tilly can speak to that as well. So thank you. In your packets, Britt and I had a conversation within the past couple of weeks about a number of buildings that have needs for either roof replacement or steam conversion. And Mayor, is that okay if I speak to this
Yes.
round of projects?
We're going to move you up, so thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, whatever you got to do.
Yes, thank you. So I'm looking at a spreadsheet that Britt and I have talked about. It lists projects from the library, the fire hall, Public Works, Senior Center, City Hall, and Library. And it's a variety of projects ranging from roof replacement to steam conversion. The total on this sheet is approximately 5.7 million. And with a majority of that being the steam conversion projects. And certainly, Mayor, I took note when you said that a bonding bill request for steam conversion here at City Hall, that, as well, that the bonding bill is likely not to occur this year. And I would imagine that that would be an item for them to review next year. But along with, well, in your packets, rather, I put together a calendar of, if you did move ahead with financing, the approach that you would potentially want to consider is what we used years ago when you did some improvements here at City Hall. They're called capital improvement plan bonds. This is a very common financing approach that cities utilize to fix up buildings. They're public works buildings, public safety buildings, City Hall buildings, et cetera. And as well, we put together a tax impact sheet for you to consider. So if you did the steam conversion projects, we put together financing options of 15 years and 20 years. We're certainly aware of the public utilities and their steam conversion loan program. And hard to argue with the 0%. My understanding is it's up to 600,000 per municipality, or per, not municipality, per project that you could potentially take a loan from them. We've incorporated that into the scenario as well. So, and perhaps, Mayor, I'll just address or answer any questions you or the other members of the council may have. What I put together, like I said, was just the direction of, if you did want to move ahead on the roof replacements, the steam conversion projects, capital improvement plan bonds, as well as one other financing tool, could be utilized as well. And there's a relatively straightforward path forward. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, George. Councilor Paulson?
Thank you. One quick question I have is, was that capped at the public utilities, 600,000 per project, or would it be considered per address?
Britt, do you know the answer to that?
That's what I thought. Because if people had two commercial buildings, they could apply for both of the addresses. So does that change maybe what you put together?
Very possibly, yes. And that would be, for example, if, and I believe on this sheet, there was steam conversion at the City Hall, the library, and Britt, was there any others? And the Senior Center. So absolutely, if you can access a loan for that amount per project, at 0%, yes. We would wholeheartedly support that.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? So how does, when we look at a long-term bond and indebtedness is moving forward, then, so there's a lot of, for the most part, unfunded mandates, and I look at this as being an unfunded mandate, even though we have steam conversion funds available for that. We don't have that money to convert from steam to gas, and the utilities being an autonomous entity, we don't have any choice but to convert by the end of 2026. And that might be for additional conversation about maybe exempting some city buildings in order to accomplish the finances that are available to do that. But that sets a bad precedent for those who are required to convert by the end of 2026. So I'm at a loss as to, without that bond money, how that's going to affect that. And by looking at a loan from the public utilities for steam conversion, whatever money they have left over in that account, which I don't really know how much that is, how is that going to affect the other people's ability within the commercial district and some residential properties you have yet to convert? How is that going to affect their ability to get that steam conversion loan and things of that nature? That's something we need to look at as well.
Mayor, one other point, I was
thank
taking
you.
some notes as you were talking about the legislative update. One financing option we could consider, and like you said, there's the deadline of the conversion for 2026, but it could be looking at the issuance of short-term bonds, and then so that you've got the money to make the replacements or make the conversion. We did this on another project here in the city several years ago where you issue short-term construction period financing. During that time, then perhaps you're certainly eligible to access bonding money if you're able to. And then at the end of 3 years or at a point in between, prior to the 3 years, you can convert that to the long-term debt. So if there's grants that can be accessed, your long-term financing certainly would be reduced.
Well, thank you. And I think coupled with that would be some other funding opportunities outside the legislative branch, which we are now exploring. So by doing those things, if that funding source comes to fruition, then we can maybe combine those two things in order to accomplish the goals and objectives that we need to get the work done. But if you're looking at $5.7 million, George, that includes the other, all the city buildings with the roofs that need to be replaced and those kind of things. And the reason I ask that question is because, I know this throws another monkey wrench in the gearbox, for lack of a better analogy, that we have a public works garage that is woefully inadequate. I mean, yeah, if you want to put a new roof on there, put new siding, I mean, they work in horrible conditions over there. And so so that's part of our building remodel as well. So if we're looking at those things, if we're looking at bonding for those at about $5.7 million, I don't know if that includes the restructuring of a public works facility to some degree, at least to shore up until a more adequate one could be developed. But they need a better place to do their work. And when you got a floor that's going like this, in the office, and you got tiles popping up, and you got leaks in the side of the building, those kind of things. So this is part of that bond that we're potentially looking at as well. So I appreciate that.
And Mayor, I'll defer to your administrator on if that's on this list. I don't believe that is
It's
on this
not.
list. Okay,
It's not.
all right. It's and just for a little further conversation, it's the same financing approach, that capital improvement plan bonds that I referenced, that would be, if you need to make improvements to the building, whether it be public works, public safety, city hall, that you could utilize for not only the roof, but inside, like you said.
Thank you. Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, just as we were just talking this through, I had a public utilities commissioner, when we were actually doing commission interviews, Mr. Johnson had mentioned that you could get steam boilers, and we have employees with boilers licenses, do we not? Brian, Jim? Is that something that we could possibly enter, because I'm assuming that the estimates you received were for gas conversion. It's an actual steam boiler you can purchase to maintain your current steam. It's not air conditioning. But when we talked to a licensed contractor regarding that, and it's because it's dangerous, so you need a boiler license. But do you think that would be something that we could talk about, discuss? I think you even were in on some of those discussions. Say that again, Jim. Say that again.
The cost was extensive on the gas, hot water boilers. A lot of that comes when you're running a lot of electronic things that are moving in and out, and your pressures they're a lot more sensitive where we're not even sure if our existing water boilers
Okay, so that idea would be a no-go. I was just trying to understand, maybe then we could have the money to do a new Public Works garage.
and the hospital, I believe, is looking at us, and that's for a one where us using it for 3 or 4 or 5.
I do know the hospital is doing that currently.
Yes.
So that's where I was just thinking maybe it would offset, but if it's not, then it's not even worth looking into. I just was brainstorming.
Yep, thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, back in the day, you could put, maybe there was a request to put cooling towers in, all kinds of other stuff in the lake, but this is the function. So, George, so you laid out this plan of about $5.7 million, excluding any public works stuff, to do the repairs of these buildings. And so there's short-term and long-term opportunities there moving forward and working with Britt, our city administrator. Pardon? Yeah, not include, that doesn't include the roofs either? It does include the roofs. Yeah, okay, thank you. Jim?
I also say, I don't know if you're looking at this as have those underground utilities.
Okay, thank you, Jim. George?
Nothing more to add, Mayor, unless there's additional questions. We can certainly, with this list of projects, depending upon how quickly they need to move forward, we can certainly respond accordingly, because there's, by virtue of you doing your street project, a bond official statement is prepared for that. Updating that for an additional borrowing, if necessary, is relatively straightforward. So, in terms of this list of projects, we'll wait to hear back from the city if you would like to move ahead on them, how quickly, which ones, and again, maybe that conversation with public utilities on their loan dollars too can be incorporated.
Very good, thank you. Councilor Bachschnider?
Thank you. Very helpful overview. One thing that I think that the council needs to consider going forward, and again, this is just my opinion, is looking at the list of, I'm looking at the one with like the red headers, that spreadsheet, where there's some lines that are red writing, some are black writing. And I'm assuming that in the sheet you're talking about, the red writing is is pulled over. But this is saying $6.9 million in project costs. And that's everything in red writing. But what we, in my opinion, really need to consider is at what point are we going to cut our losses on some of these city buildings? And just picking like probably the most expensive one or one of the more expensive ones, looking at the greenhouse needing $1,080,000 in structural safety and a boiler system. Is that something that, based on the annual cost to operate and the annual revenue, that we can simply afford or not? And I think that going forward, that has to be part of the conversation of what can and can we not, and what is vital to operate a community versus what is something that it's nice to have, of course, but what is something that we as taxpayers simply can't afford to keep operating. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buck-Schneider. Councillor Motley, and then over to Councillor Paulson. Councillor Motley.
Just something quick to segue to Councillor Bachschnider. When do we make that decision on what buildings we can get rid of or not do anything with for steam conversion? Save money? When do we have that discussion?
Right
Because
now.
I know, Jim, we want to keep this moving and so that we're not behind the ball here, which we probably already are. But I mean, we need to, when do we have those discussions? We talk about it. What buildings do we decide not to do anything with?
Well, there are 40 buildings, right around 40 buildings, maybe a little bit more, that we own and operate, including the lift stations. Is that correct, Jim? But we have about 40 buildings or so?
I thought the list was around 52.
Oh, 52 buildings.
We did have an adjuster, a lot of walk-arounds, and what you consider a building, or I consider a building basically all the water, I'm with you, Annie. We gotta look at cutting some losses. In my opinion, I mean, we should have cut some losses years ago on things. Repair.
Do you have an opinion on what to cut right now to the council?
I want to open that can of worms.
Well, we're here for.
I mean, this is how I vision the working session going
Yeah,
today, was
yep.
to have these conversations. On the spreadsheet, one of the things I asked for was the annual cost to operate. I see it just says $0 on all of these down the line, which we know is inaccurate. What are the cost utilities? What's our staff costs? What's plowing costs? What's, all of those things need to be considered. And then really, we will have to look to our professional staff to make any recommendations on that. And we maybe don't need to have a full conversation on each and every single building today, but I think going forward, we really will rely heavily on recommendations from staff on that.
Pam?
Thank you, Mayor. I took this sheet from the League of Minnesota Cities, our insurance information, and then just put the costs of what needs to get done after my conversation with Mr. Rosfit. So we had literally a week to get all this documentation ready for this meeting, which doesn't give us a lot of time. There's a lot of information that you had requested that obviously is not on here, so between Britt and I, we tried to do the best we could. And maybe going forward, I suggest that instead of having these meetings with 10 different items on it to look at, if we're gonna have a working session, pick out the top 3. Then at the next time, go to the next 3 and the next 3 moving forward. Having this many items on this meeting today and getting all the information for the council is a lot, okay? So just, and then these projected costs, everything in red were the projected costs for the steam conversion and the roofs at each of those particular buildings.
Councillor Bachschnider?
And thank you for all the work you guys did to prepare everything on this. I think really the purpose of this was to get the ball rolling on all of these things today, and then going forward, breaking it out and potentially even in committee work and structure that already exists, and then bringing that to committee of the whole when appropriate. But just making the full council aware of all of these things that we need to really consider going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bachschnider. Councilor Paulson?
So I know George is here, and I don't want to keep you, George, but I do have a question regarding these capital improvement bonds, no matter which direction we go with which buildings, and whether they be steam conversion or roof. You can explore that with our staff and give us different scenarios. I just have a couple questions regarding on the capital improvement bond scenarios. Is that interest rate any different than what we just discussed this morning? Is it still around that 5.56?
They would be,
Would
thank
we
you for
do
the
a
question.
non-rating?
Good
I'm just
question.
concerned about the interest rate. That's pretty high if we're going to that dollar amount.
Yes. The bonds that we talked about earlier for financing street projects is a general obligation bond. The capital improvement bonds are also a general obligation bond. So they would be, if the financing term is the same, they would be relatively the same.
Okay. And then by doing these, I mean, we have really no choice. We have to do a lot of this. We just, I mean, we'll have to go and pick and choose, do an inventory of what we can let go, obviously. But is this going to impact our bond rating then even further? Even though these are non-rated, will this, does the amount that we have on our books, and I know that that's review city long-term debt and indebtedness. I don't know if we're getting into that or if you were even going to touch base on that or if that was what Britt was going to touch base on. But that's the meshing that I'd like to understand as we move forward for a lot of the not only the 10-year capital outlay, but the capital improvements that we are mandated to make, basically. And then obviously we've got equipment that is we need new equipment on a lot of different things. So I just want to know how that is relative to one another, and will that impact, or how will that impact our current bond rating, which actually isn't where I'd like it to be at. So I don't know if you can answer that.
Thank you for the question. So and not to defer this, I wasn't necessarily sure which topic to speak on today, but the bond rating itself, at one of your upcoming meetings where there will be the bonds, there'll be a resolution to award the sale of bonds. Either I or Baker Tilly can speak to that more about here are the criteria, or go into more detail, if you will, about this. Generally speaking, there's several categories that go into your rating. Debt is one of them. That's a significant one. The economy, and the economy is a kind of a broad topic where they bring in demographic information about median household income, unemployment, that type of statistics as well. Management of your municipality, that's where what policies and procedures do you have? When I referenced several times here, financial management plan, you get a check mark in the yes column if you have that in place. That doesn't automatically lift your rating, but it helps, again, to provide that roadmap forward. And the more policies and procedures that you have, capital improvement plans, other equipment replacement, things of that nature, and then what are your funding sources to help pay for these plans. If that's incorporated, those are all looked upon very favorably by the rating agencies. So those are kind of the big categories. Economy, some of that you can't control, certainly. And location is key there. If Virginia were located in Washington County down by the Twin Cities, you'd probably automatically have a several notch higher bond rating. But so part of that is out of your control. The demographic type of information that I noted. Debt and management are probably the two biggest ones that you can directly control. And so those are debt, if you have it, and then having a plan to pay for that debt that you have on the books. Having that plan is kind of a key element because it, again, provides the roadmap if you, and it's not as if you engage a firm, and I'm not so subtly recommending Baker Tilly that you engage them to do this plan. It doesn't get done in 2 weeks. It's a plan that is probably incorporating several meetings like this. It's probably taking 2 to 3 months to prepare.
Is that something they would work, like, at the, I mean, I know staff level would that be something also, George, they would work with at the council level too, so we could understand the management, like how that you're arriving, or they would be helping us arrive to those decisions moving
Yes.
forward?
Yes, absolutely. Incorporating a capital improvement plan that you may have, that gets built in. You can work whatever funds you want into that plan. For example, if you want to have water, sewer, storm, et cetera, as part of that plan, along with the arena, if that wants to be part of the plan. So they'll go through that with you
Areas of
before they
focus.
start.
Okay. And then the last thing that I guess I wanted to bring into this conversation is, you know, Counselor Bachschneider kind of alluded to what is the overall plan, and I think our financial management plan is probably the most fundamental and important part of the plan going forward, you know, as we take a look at 5 or 10 years down the line. Is it part of that discussion that would be having, or we would be having, to potentially put monies aside into different avenues? Say, you're gonna need a roof in 20 years, so we're gonna put a roof fund. We're gonna need da-da-da-da-da, so we're gonna put this. With that type of management, and unfortunately, it would probably be in the form of a levy, but once it's in the levy, then it's a continuous funding for your needs, maybe 10 years. It depends on what it is. Whether it's a roof, it might go 20 years. If it's a piece of equipment, it might be 10 years. I don't know. But would that discussion be part of this so that we then could make decisions, levy-based decisions, if needed, to put money away for that rainy day and leave it there on a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like it rolls over. It doesn't get absorbed at the end of the year by the general fund. It would be, and I don't know if that's called an enterprise fund. I call it the envelope system. That's what I do. No, I'm kidding. But I mean, is that part of something that we could discuss so that we aren't having, I mean, when you look at the interest rates and what we're paying over the course of 20 years, that if we would have just put money aside 15 years ago, we would have enough money with that accumulated interest to probably pay for these projects, apart from maybe streets, you know.
Mayor and Council, yes, I'll try to address your question. Certainly the big ticket items, like what we talked about this morning, a $9 million street project, it's hard to set aside money to pay cash for that. And certainly, yes, as part of a plan, you can build kind of a pay-go kind of structure into that where, and yes, you have to fund that somehow, but the strategy there might be that over time that we're building up a fund that, you know, to fund roof replacements, to buy a street sweeper, things of that nature, so that you're not needing to come to the bond market each time. And so, yes, those types of strategies, and certainly one of the first meetings of any municipal advisor sitting down with a city to put together a plan like this would be, let's just talk. You know, they should come here and just listen and hear what your projects are, what's your desire, and then incorporate that into the plan. Mayor and Council, certainly as it relates to this topic, the the steam conversion and the other roof replacement projects. I think we'll just know that Britt and I keep in touch very regularly, and if there's the need to come back and put any additional financing information together on how to do this, or what's an option for you, or several options, we'll make sure to do that.
Thank you, George, very much. Any other questions for Mr. Eilertson? Appreciate all your patience here today. Thanks for the long day.
Well, this way I can skip that dinner my wife put together tonight, so. No. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much.
Part of that discussion in your packet, there's information from Carl Anderson. Carl Anderson does a facilities conditions study that they could do for our buildings too if we wanted to. I don't know the dollar amount for it, but they wanted me to give you that information, at least so you guys could see it, that they would be able to do a facilities conditions assessment, and then it would come with a plan, similar to what George was saying, a capital improvement plan about how you are going to pay for buildings, repairs, or whatever it might be.
Steve, Councilor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. Something just popped into my head, and I find it extremely ironic that we're talking about getting rid of current amenities for our citizens, and yet we're looking at planning for an eastern recreation zone that is going to cost us money. The dichotomy of having something that already exists and is utilized by numerous people in our community, as opposed to something that we'll have to figure out how to pay for and maintain, that just doesn't connect for me. I really think that looking at the list, and Pam, thank you, and folks for putting it together. You know, some of these things are inclusive. We don't have 52 buildings. Some of this are the picnic shelters. Some of these are lift stations that we cannot get rid of. There is just the parks are identified as properties, and maybe that's a better definition, is these are the properties we have and how they fit. And I think that's an important part to remember, that all of these properties fit into a bigger picture of why people want to be in Virginia, of what we do to maintain the sewage flowing in the right direction at the right time. A year ago, we experienced what happens when that doesn't work. And again, the idea of having capital outlay, and we've been working, our staff have been working diligently on that. And part of the reason we're in this position is because for years and years, it was deferred maintenance. It was, let's patch it, and patch it and forget it until we need to think about it again. And I, again, will bring up the grader that we passed on, that we tried to take money from last year that we knew wasn't used and utilize that restricted as we move forward to pay for the grader for this year. And that's exactly what we're talking about right now. How do we plan ahead? Well, that was planning backwards, actually, and we knew the money existed. It was there. We saw it. The department heads absolutely knew it was there. Britt validated, Sherry validated that there is money available for us right now to purchase a grader that we have to have. And the council said, no, we don't want that. And then within a week or two, we had a snowstorm. And because of that, there were houses in parts of Virginia that didn't get plowed until the next day because we didn't have the equipment, because the used equipment we have failed just like we were told it would. And so to make this a black and white issue, or okay, let's get rid of 6 buildings and that's going to help us balance budget, and that's, you know, I will stand here and advocate for the greenhouse every day, all day long. That is an amazing asset that nobody north of the Twin Cities has. And for us to even consider getting rid of it now, after all the time and work that's been put into it, to me would be irresponsible. This good to have this picture, this discussion, and but again, it's, and I appreciate Pam's input that we're not going to solve everything right now. And this is why we have committee of the whole meetings. And this is why we get together every week for a city of our size and try to discuss things, because it's not something we're going to solve all at once. We need to continue looking at all the aspects and not just numbers. We have to consider the quality of life for people. Everybody sitting at a desk that is elected is a taxpayer. I am a taxpayer. Everything we do within this body is taxpayer dollars unless it's a donation, whether it's local taxes or state taxes or federal taxes. Everything we do is tax dollars. Everything, unless a company gives us a donation or sponsors something. So I am a taxpayer, so every time someone says, well, the taxpayers of Virginia don't want this, I caution you, because that's not every taxpayer. There are several taxpayers that I know of that understand that sometimes it's not as easy as we'd like it to be. Sometimes we can't save money. If we could save money, we wouldn't be bonding. Government works differently than personal finances. It works different than business. We've had a 10-year capital outlay the whole 8 years I've been here. And I get frustrated when I hear the question, do we have a plan? Do we know what's happening? Yes, we've had that for years and years and years. We see it every year. This is our wish list. The number of times we've had to shuffle things down that we need is frustrating, but it's understandable, and there's a little bit of give and take on everything. So I just really want to point out that there are different perspectives from our taxpayers as well. There are a lot of people that I talk to, and I'll quantify that with it's just my circle of friends and the people that reach out to me that understand paying more on a levy is needed to keep the quality of life that we expect in Virginia. And that they understand that the cost of everything else in the world has gone up. There is zero reason why the cost of living in a town should not go up. Everything we purchase, everything we order, everything goes up because of inflation, because of numerous factors that we cannot control. And to think that we can not raise taxes while everything else is increasing, it's absurd to me to think that nobody wants that. We need to maintain balance and find harmony in how we move forward with those things. So with that being said, I appreciate everybody's time, those of you who are still sitting here in the audience, and most of which our employees appreciate it, and we will, I guess I'm ready to move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. You know, all of you sitting here, staff, you know, you have better things to do than sit here and listen to what we have to say. You sit there because you have proposals that you have to make, you have reports you have to give, and I would have liked to have deviated from it, and I was remiss in doing so, so I apologize for that. So let's move up to number 5 and number 6. Number 5 is update on current and proposed street and alley projects. Jim, do you have anything that you can give us update on with respect to the current proposed street and alley projects? Could you come on up, if you would, please? And I appreciate you sitting here this whole time. I know you have other duties and responsibilities, but if you could just give us a quick update on the current and proposed street and alley projects.
On the existing ones right now, existing alley projects right now, well overdue. I will say that much. They just got started. They're a couple weeks into, but a lot of extremely poor infrastructure, wide ties, backfill. The material, the backfills, I mean, they're pulling boulders the size of this table out of there that are covered for backfill under and over these sewer lines and things like that. It's going to be a lot of trial and error. Asbestos abatement is here and there, so it's going to be time consuming. So with that project, it is moving forward. Like I say, it can be a slow process. 14th and 20th, same thing, moving forward, but long overdue, a lot of changes. Moving ahead, though, it's something we expected. Pole hockey ran into several other obstacles up there with, storm sewer, the steam line runs, fiber optic runs a half dozen different ways right over where we plan to put a structure. Now they'll be building a structure, and they can't stretch the fiber optic lines or move them out of the way So there's going to be some trial and error in there. So we've got our hands full. Same with Rotary Park, that project's ongoing. The 6th Avenue project, the 13th Street project, those are reclaim overlay projects. We have many other streets that are well overdue, many curbs. I mean, I looked the other day, Trenty Law Firm, it's embarrassing what that curb line looks like in front of that building. It's just, we've got our hands full. And we also did have, we're continually having collapses and cave-ins and things like that. I've got probably a dozen structures from from over the winter that have caved in, and I've got sinkholes and that, so, and then they all cost money, I mean, to replace a structure, to repair some pipe. I know the 500 block of 11th Street, we put a patch in there, a 15-foot patch, but the rest of that pipe for that block, what we can see down there, is caved in, and it still flows, but it's just a matter of time before it's a complete failure. So it's stuff that's going to have to be addressed.
Okay, thank you. I have a question about the 6th Avenue project moving forward. That's exactly, the Southern Drive. And I know there's a lot of bad streets still, but that's got to be one of the worst ones ever. And I know we probably have that scheduled, we're talking about the proposed moving forward. Is that still kind of on the schedule for 2027 or 2028?
The Southern Drive part?
Yeah. Southern Drive complete.
I know it's being addressed, but there's some private ownership in there that we're addressing right now. There's state-owned property in that stretch that goes to, because we'd like to continue that to 6th Avenue.
Right.
To the underpass on Highway 53.
Right.
But, pardon me, Brett?
On that portion.
Yeah, and there's some, we're trying to work with the state to get them to make those improvements there and then maybe turn that stretch of the road over to us.
Okay. What are the other, proposed, we have proposed streets for, coming down the road. And so the question I have is, you mentioned earlier about the utilities under the utility building. So, I mean, where's that, where are we at with that? As part of that process. Thank you, Britt. Appreciate the clarification. Okay.
So yeah, that is stages, but we have very large utilities that run west from all of from the east end of town, run west, and then run through the public utilities whole facility there. And then they go south down towards Target and make that way out towards the mall and towards the wastewater treatment plant.
Is this part of the 6th Avenue project then? Okay, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. Okay, any questions for Jim about, before we're talking about street and alley, proposed street and alley projects? And I know we got them all over town, and for decades we haven't. And so cutting these trees down for these projects and making sure that, the infrastructure is, preserved. So if you just give us a very brief synopsis of, for the general public's edification, you're cutting down all these trees, and not necessarily just for street projects because of their end of life, diseased, and they're choking out our infrastructure underneath.
Yes, and we've received an absurd amount of calls on the trees. People actually want them removed now because they have turned into a safety hazard, or it's affecting a sidewalk, or whatever it might be, and so we have been going through and we've been cutting trees as we can, we've been grinding as we can also, and it's a slow process. We get a month window or a couple month windows, things won't be done, and we've been getting a lot of calls. Well, our tree was cut, but the stump wasn't ground yet, and the sidewalk wasn't fixed yet. Yeah, well, we're not in that stage yet. We've got what we're working on, we're getting there. The hazard part is getting the tree down, so it's not gonna fall on a home or a child or, a vehicle or something like that, and then we're back to liabilities, our insurances are.
One more question. The 6th Avenue project that goes up to north side, what happened there by the by the Rotary Apartments, what, you had to dig all that up?
Yeah, those, some of those storm sewers settled over the winter, and you're gonna see that, and that's part of their, cost on that. Whether it was an issue with compaction or it was an issue with concrete or whatever it might have been, but it's stuff that's gotta be repaired and redone prior to, our approval on it.
Okay, and two more questions. The second quote on 13th Street South is going to be right around June 7th. How about the 6th Avenue North?
They're shooting for that at the same time, and they're also shooting for the reclaim overlays on 15th and a half, 16th, and 3rd Street, or is it 4th Street by Boyer Lumber there?
Yes.
4th Street by Boyer Lumber, and also they're working on Hazel Avenue. That will be a little more where they're adding a lift into that, but their Wasabi's bit is to try to be in town for one and to catch all those ones first.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paulson?
Thank you. So Jim, on that, I actually was going to touch base on the tree situation. As you are planning the street improvements, and I haven't attended a street and alley meeting, so I don't know if this has been a topic of discussion. If you consider widening the street by eliminating one sidewalk, would there be a potential to keep trees on one side of a boulevard? I mean, are you planning that going forward? Are you having those discussions going forward? And even though boulevard trees, it's very difficult because they eventually, the root system really impacts sidewalks, it impacts everything. But I know that people are concerned about trees being removed and not replanted.
And that's a good question, because what we're doing on, if we're looking at an upcoming street project, what I'd like to see is, I'd love to see the curb and then the sidewalk. And then either you put the tree behind the sidewalk, because that allows my crews during winter times, street sweeping times, to catch everything with a grader and pull it out on the street. And we're clearing a lot of those sidewalks. We've got a lot of elderly people in town that like to walk down the sidewalks, and that would eliminate that. We do have some power poles that are planted in there. There's nothing we can do about them. We've got to work around them. The biggest thing is, and I don't have a problem, I'm all for the trees, but if we could put them on the back side of that sidewalk where they're not going to interfere with our infrastructure, and that sidewalk again, where it's going to break that sidewalk or heave that sidewalk again.
And I appreciate you having those conversations because I feel like that might alleviate some of people's concern regarding the trees. And I do feel like it probably is better overall with a plan in place like what you're suggesting. So for snow removal, street sweeping, whatever, it's a lot more, I guess it's a lot easier for your crew and for the equipment.
Yes, and the thing I want to bring to your attention, and I brought it up several times, is we're responsible for all the alleys now. We're responsible for the avenues that the snow magically disappeared when we had steam heat. There is no more. People built up their alleys, they built fences, they have off-street parking there, they built bigger garages. There's nowhere for that snow to go in the alley. You can't put it out there and it's going to melt the next day. All that snow we've got to take out of the alley, shove it out on the avenue, shove it out on the street, and come back and haul it out later. And all that's time consuming. And that's where I go back to a grader. I need things with down pressure that can scrape down and take this material out, so.
One quick question, curbs. I was in Colorado and these other places today, the curbs, instead of being straight up and down, they're angled down. They're slanted, they're angled. So when people, you can't trip over them or whatever, so they're kind of angled down to where the water still runs down into the drain. Is there a reason why we don't do that?
You just haven't seen that so much in the smaller suburban areas, as much you do as in the larger cities.
Okay.
They like a fancier footprint, and with that, costs more money.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for questions that they have for Jim? Councillor Freely?
Being the esteemed chairman of the Street and Alley Committee, I'd like to add my piece of that. Jim did a great job just from rote memorization, but I want to kudos to Britt and Matt. They put together and collaborated a construction season 2025 update that was published. I have it here in front of me, and you pretty much hit all of it. Hard to do because there's so much of a volume of things that are occurring, but it's underway currently, and a lot of projects are in progress.
Great. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Item 6, update on current proposed park and rec projects. What do we got going? Mr. Silber, Mr. Hunt.
So as you can see from the spreadsheet that's in your packet, we do have several ongoing park and recreation projects. Most all of our park and rec projects are funded without general fund dollars, as you can see. And at the bottom portion of the spreadsheet, we have a list of future projects that are awaiting design, development, and funding options. Do want to bring it to everybody's attention because I know we're getting to the point that you're going to start receiving complaints about it. Monkey Island. Monkey Island in Olcott Park, that everybody right around Land of the Loon time starts to complain that it's overgrown and everything. There is a plan in place for Monkey Island. The Lakes Beautification volunteer that used to take care of that area is no longer taking care of that area. We're going to now be working with North St. Louis County Soil and Water. They're going to be converting that whole Monkey Island into a pollinator garden, which is going to be absolutely wonderful. As part of that, we are planning on doing some repainting of Monkey Island as we remove all of the existing plants that are slated to be removed and everything. This is probably not going to happen before Land of the Loon, so hold on to your seats. We're probably going to get a couple of complaints in the meantime that we are not taking care of it, but there is a plan in place for a long-term solution to take care of it. Other projects that are currently underway that we have in our parks, we've got the Lions Shelter re-siding project. I just heard today that our siding has arrived for that, so that's sitting in the whole hockey yard, so we'll be getting that. We've also got windows on order so that we can redo the windows in the Lions building. So our goal is to have that project done before Land of the Loon. Keep your fingers crossed that we're able to have the staff time to get that done. Thankfully, we've got some good summer students that are now on board, so they'll be spending a lot more time on the mowers. Other project that we have going on here this summer, we're going to be working with the Public Works Department to relocate the basketball court that is in Rotary Park. We're going to be relocating that over on Silver Lake next to the old beach area. That went through Park and Rec Commission and was determined that getting it closer to the college and some of the people that routinely use that basketball court would be advantageous for us since we had to relocate it anyway, so we'll be doing that. Another small project that we have on our radar this year that the city is funding, which is pretty much a maintenance project, is the Lions Shelter on Silver Lake. That's the one here at the end of Chestnut Street. There's a lot of rotting boards on it. We hope to get those boards replaced, and then we've been working with and hoping that Revive Virginia will do a volunteer painting day to paint the pavilion, so engaging the community in taking care of our parks. So on the bottom of the page, you'll see several of our upcoming park projects that we hope to be doing. We have things such as the 9th Avenue entrance to Olcott Park, upgrading the entrance there, much like we did on 9th Street. The greenhouse upgrades, which are something that we just talked about a little while ago. The Silver Lake and Southside Park Connector Trail and Community Splash Pad Project, which everybody's excited about. We've got grant applications out for that. The Silver Lake Canoe and Kayak Rental Kiosk System that would go right next to the existing boat ramp, or could go down by the beach. The ADA dock and that would tie into that. Upgrades for the Olcott Park Playground. The playground is in dire need of being updated. Adding a Virginia all-wheel park or a skate park is something that we had spent some time on a couple years ago, doing some studies on and everything, and have a preliminary design and everything for that. We just need to seek out funding or find funding for that. Here again this spring, I did have some people reach out to me interested in that. However, there just is not a pot of money laying around for that project, so have not been able to move forward on it at this point. One of the things that I will pitch at this point that I believe is vitally important to us is updating our park and recreation master plan. Our existing master plan, we have essentially done all of the goals in it. It would be great to get the citizens' engagement and update that park and recreation master plan so that we're not doing Brian's projects, that we are making sure that we have reached out and gotten the input from all of our citizens, listened to everybody, and come up with a good plan. Also, having an updated park and recreation master plan is really helpful when applying for grants so that you can reference that the project that you're applying for the grant has been researched and has already received the community support and is wanted by the community. So it's a good thing for us to put in there. I've requested funds for this several times. Unfortunately, we just haven't had the extra money laying around in the budget to do that. I'll continue to ask for those funds until we can get that project done. But that's a basis of where we are with our current projects and future projects that we have coming up.
Thank you, Brian. Excellent. Before we go to Counselor, I'll be honest, two quick things. They're small. Biffy's at the golf course. The old ones are still up there. The new ones are alongside. They're going to get rid of those old ones?
Yes, we will be removing the old ones here at some point.
Okay, and how about the softball fields, which are very unutilized, if at all? What are your plans with that in the softball fields, those 3 softball fields down there by the Tennis for All facility?
The softball fields at Tennis for All facility, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, the first 2 fields will be used by the Women's Softball League. And then on Mondays, Wednesdays, and possibly Fridays, all 3 fields will be utilized by our summer youth softball program this year. With the construction on Highway 53, the summer softball or youth softball will not be able to utilize the turf fields up at the school. So they've asked us for some additional fields, so they will be utilizing those fields here this summer.
Thank you, Brian. That's what I thought. Before you leave, Counselor Beyondich?
Thank you for a pollinator garden.
Wasn't my idea, it was brought to us, and everybody jumped on board and thought it was a great idea.
I think it's wonderful to have something. I know it's been an angst with some of the citizens that the weeds, and they're hard to keep up with, so I think that's a perfect solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Item 7, review of city organizational structure. We talked about that at the committee of the whole meeting. Update on the finance HR director position and other hiring updates. Britt or Counselor Paulson, what do we got here?
Finally got one, thank you. I was requested to create an org chart for the entire city, so that's what you'll see here. It's this
Okay, thank
colorful
you.
sheet. Yep.
We good? Counselor Bachschnider?
Thank you. I think that's helpful to see going forward and just for us to have this information. So thank you. I think as we look at how the city structure is changing, such as with opening a new public safety building and employees needing to move, it's helpful to see what this looks like now and how it may have to adjust in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. So, yeah, this chart is wonderful. Thank you so much for doing it. It's very helpful, and it's very inclusive of everybody. So that I really do appreciate. I do want to talk about, I feel like we needed to go back to the 10-year capital equipment outlay stuff, but I wanted to talk about the hiring updates for public safety. As that building is projected to be opened, when are we thinking October, November? September 1 move-in?
When? December? Oh, September. Okay, thank you. Oh, holy cow, you're going to have a heart attack. All right, thank you.
So I guess my question, just seeing this organizational chart in here, just kind of brought to mind that we're probably going to need to know what we're going to need additional for the public safety building. And I don't know if you guys want to address that. So we can, do you need maintenance people? Do you need, like, what are we going to need to operate that facility? And then what is it going to look like when we exit this facility and the other facility? If you guys could address maybe some of those things. And you're not held to this, it's just a working session, just so we can kind of understand what we're gonna need to look at for that operation of the building. And then what we're looking at when police leave the city hall. I don't know if you have anything to do with that. And then, that was a great look, Jim. And then what the fire department, what the old building is gonna look like. What are some plans or ideas?
Well, I'm all over the place, but I can answer a few things. I believe with the existing fire hall, we're looking at some storage, probably on the ambulance side.
So the existing fire hall, we're gonna have vehicles, apparatus, and trailers, fire side.
That's kind of the ultimate plan for the empty building once it's vacated. And then how about operationally, what are we gonna be looking at for maintenance wise? Because I feel like right now, do you guys do your own shoveling? Like, how does that work at your building? I don't know that.
So, new building. As far as the fire side of the building.
Sure. So you don't think that you'll need additional janitorial staff? How about like the,
Not for the fire side, I can't speak for PD.
okay, and Chief Nicola, you're here. What do you think for the police side?
Obviously, we're gonna need custodial services. We've had discussions, the issue with, asking member to come over to do it, loaded as it is most of the time. Buildings, there's an option there. The other discussion would be the receptionist window. Shuffle here at City Hall, where maybe an admin staff of some sorts have a receptionist at our lobby, because obviously we still have parking tickets that need to be paid, dog licenses, phones need to be answered, so forth. The possibility of our evidence tech that a little bit. Obviously, there's some administrative duties that if we done in that currently that can be shifted maybe towards an admin type person that's also. Those are some discussions that we've been preliminarily having, but definitely we need to
Yeah, so maybe if those discussions could continue, then we can maybe set a plan in place, because I also feel like that is something we will need to plan for the 26th budget and forward. So I really appreciate that. And then what do you think the plans would be when the police vacate downstairs? What?
beautiful office space for somebody other than you know, and I don't want to speak for other departments, but I've always thought having all of City Hall on the main floor would be a great idea, personally. It would also give a little bit more privacy. I've always thought, like Megan's position, employees going in and having to speak about private things while other employees are there. There's some opportunities for more private back squad room area of ours is another outstanding area that can be used for a lot of different things. There's a lot of opportunity there to kind of more and change it. And I know Britt's talked about possibly taking some of the other office spaces and maybe utilizing them for businesses that want to rent.
Great, thank you for that. As long as we're having this, I just thought I would ask so we can maybe get the ball rolling sooner than later. Thanks, Mayor.
The one thing also with your back room at the police facility, with having to put a new boiler system in City Hall, that boiler system's gonna have to go there. We don't have enough room down below the next level in the utility room, and we need something with a out-facing wall for ventilation system. So we would probably need that area, and that would probably be our best location because of the utilities and the tie-ins we've got to do, which are right below us.
Thank you. Councilor Johnson?
You, Mayor, you mentioned boiler licenses. Is that something we can start working on now so that we can get people trained in as the boiler licenses are put in? I know that there are at least two different kinds of boilers licenses, but I know that's a process, and it's something I would prefer we get ahead on and get them trained in and ready to go, so as they're installing those, they can have that knowledge.
And that's a great question there too. And I'd love to see that. I brought that up. My opinion, we should have had somebody in there already, shadowing the contractors, getting contact information, just knowing a little bit about everything that's going on there. I do feel that there's a spot for probably a full-time building maintenance. That's a big facility, a lot of grounds, snow removal, snow disposal, garage doors, man doors, bathrooms. There's going to be some issues over the years, and as the years go by, you want to do that everyday general maintenance. So you continue to do it. I mean, there's filtration systems that got to be changed daily, stuff that's got to be monitored all the time. Right now I'm dealing with a $15,000 valve up at the golf course that hasn't been maintained in 30 years, and now we got to replace it. So it's just stuff that I feel that preventative, and if we stay on that where we're doing this general maintenance, and I'm not blaming anyone here because this has gone on for years, but our maintenance has been, we have a big city and a lot to cover. We don't have the money, we don't have the resources, but we're in over our heads. Like Annie says, save it for a rain day. Unfortunately, it's been raining every day since I came here.
Appreciate that analogy. Then I guess the other question relating to that would be for both departments, is there going to need to be special clearance stuff for folks that are special training for folks that are cleaning the squad room and cleaning that, like, what else specialty needs will we need moving forward because of the sensitivity of, police records or that kind of stuff?
Like Jimmy currently does a yearly test that allows him access, and that meets the BCA requirements. That's always obviously been a barrier to bringing in somebody, a private company to do cleaning as well, because that's a little bit more difficult to manage, because it might be a revolving door of individuals coming in and out. So again, whether it's another person's added or a part-time person or somebody that's coming over, whatever the case may be, that's a simple test. As long as it's a city employee, it makes it a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, do we need to update on the HR Finance Director position? I know we had a Personnel Committee meeting today. You're working toward filling those positions, you're discussing those, and do we need to discuss any more here?
For those that weren't there, I believe we have a finance director job description solidified that we'll be bringing to the next committee of the whole. I will be continue working on the HR director position job description and get that for the next committee of the whole as well.
Okay, thank you. Item 8, discuss proposed garbage rate increase. So, what are we looking at? In your packet there. Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to brainstorm about this a little further after we discussed this morning regarding, because they're going to be using the landfill from different areas. I'm wondering if we could negotiate in lieu of paying
Tipping fees.
more, that maybe we could negotiate a tipping fee discount for being the host city for the landfill.
Yeah, I think we should facilitate a meeting between County Solid Waste and our staff and then work on something like that.
Because I feel like that might be, instead of increasing the rent to them or the cost to use the landfill space, if we could reduce our tipping fees, then we wouldn't have to really necessarily increase garbage rates. It would be a benefit.
I think it's something,
Right.
if I do a cost-benefit analysis of that to see what can be done.
Very good.
Let's do that. Okay, got that on your list. Thank you. Okay, I know we jumped around a little bit, but it's getting to be about 2:45. Is any other issues that you want to discuss here? Looks like we may have to have some more information at our next committee, the whole meeting moving forward. Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. So in saying that, would that help put dollars back in to rebuild the fund after we purchased a garbage truck?
Yeah, I think all that
that's-
money would go into the solid waste fund, into enterprise fund, any additional funds we get.
Okay. Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Paulson. Beautiful. Couldn't have said it any better. Councilor Bachschnider.
Thank you. I think that we were jumping just around out of order. For the grant update, really the only thing that I wanted to talk about with updates on grants is just to have everyone keep in mind any matching requirements that we might have. So grants are great, but when we're looking at projects that maybe are seen as non-essential, where is any match coming from? So I don't think we need to get into detail on it. I just wanted to put that out there. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mayor, if I may, if I do want to point out on the grants where it says new grants for 2025, and there's the two from FEMA that have no dollar amounts listed, we're still calculating that. We're at the point where at the end of our FEMA cycle, and so what we get to submit is all of our staff time. Every hour I've put in, Jenny's put in, Chris has put in, Jim's put in, everybody's put in. So it's going to be a really long list, but we're working on it. So we don't know the dollar amount yet, but we'll let you know when we get that dollar amount set.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we did jump around a little bit, but I think that, unless you want more discussion on any other topic item here today, I think we've had enough. You know, as a working session. You know, and with all due respect, and we were doing this, we got a lot of information, we were able to bounce around a lot of ideas and questions, and I think maybe this has got to be broken down into different parts so it's not quite as long. To have a personnel committee meeting, then a committee only, and then a working session makes for a very long, arduous day, and staff, so it takes a lot of staff time to that. So if in the future we do this, we should maybe try to break it down into other aspects of it too. So anything else to come before this special work session before we adjourn? Councilor Paulson.
Thank you. So we did not go and review the city 10-year capital equipment outlay, and maybe we could move that forward to a committee of the whole or part of our budget discussion or whatever needed to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. Councilor Beyondich.
You. And I do like the idea of maybe hammering down on what we really want to discuss at each meeting and trying to stick to that topic. When there's an agenda made out, and I know we all kind of veer off, but it made for a really long meeting. So I like your suggestion of picking just a few things. Let's sit down and talk about them and go forward. And I even thought of when we have the finance meeting and we gather, because that so much of that is in here, I don't know that it's necessary to keep layering. So bringing we talked about finances here, and I think this is a good place to have it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I know we deviated from the agenda a little bit, but there were people here to make presentations in that regard. It's just a lot to discover, and we have deviated from every single topic that we've discussed today into other tangents. And we got to stay on topic, but it's my job to try to run the meeting, but at the same time, people have an opportunity to voice their opinion in its elected body, and they should be able to do that, even though we're deviating from the subject matter of that particular item. So it does make for a long day. Breaking out certain sections may be very helpful, so thank you. Anybody else have anything else they'd like to bring up before we adjourn? I know some people have to leave by 3 o'clock. Councilor Bachschneider.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for participating in the conversation, preparing the information. I know it makes for a long day, but I truly am a firm believer in if it was the city council's or elected body's role to just rubber stamp everything that comes to us, then what's the point of having an elected body? And so for us to just really understand everything from the professionals here, I'm just super appreciative of it. So thank you. And I know that this is just the first of many conversations. Thanks.
Yeah, and it is, but sometimes these long days become, as the days get longer, the productivity becomes less and less. And so by being able to focus on certain things for long discussions, I think we get better off doing that. But this is a good start for this as well, so thank you. Anything else to come before the working session today? Anybody from staff? Bueller? Anyone? Okay, we're closed at 2:58 p.m. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.